Chapter 23 Commercial Transactions Kitab Buyu. Chapter 1246 Regarding trade that is mixed with swearing and idle talk. Narrated Qais ibn Abu Garasa. In the time of the Messenger of Allah, we used to be called brokers, but the Prophet came upon us one day and called us by a better name than that, saying, O company of merchants, unprofitable speech and swearing takes place in business dealings, so mix it with sadaqah, alms, great Sahih. The tradition mentioned above has also been transmitted by Qais bin Abi Garasa through a different chain of narrators to the same effect. This version has lying and swearing have a place on I. Abd Allah al-Suri said, unprofitable speech and lying, great Sahih. Chapter 1247 Regarding extraction of minerals. Narrated Abdullah ibn Abbas. A man seized his debtor who owed 10 dinars to him. He said to him, I swear by Allah, I shall not leave you until you pay off my debt to me or bring a surety. The Prophet stood as a surety for him. He then brought as much money as he promised. The Prophet asked, From where did you acquire this gold? He replied, From a mine. He said, We have no need of it. There is no good in it. Then the Messenger of Allah paid the debt on his behalf. Great Sahih. Chapter 1248 Regarding avoiding things that one doubts. Narrated Al-Nu'man bin Bashir. I heard the Messenger of Allah say, What is lawful is clear, and what is unlawful is clear. But between them are certain doubtful things. I give you an example for this. Allah has a preserve, and Allah's preserve is the things He has declared unlawful. He who pastures his animals round the preserve will soon fall into it. He who falls into doubtful things will soon be courageous. Great Sahih. Narrated Al-Nu'man bin Bashir. I heard Messenger of Allah say, But between them are certain doubtful things which many people do not recognize. He who guards against doubtful things keeps his religion and his honor blameless, but he who falls into doubtful things falls into what is unlawful. Great Sahih. Narrated Abu Hurairah. The Prophet said, A time is certainly coming to mankind when only the receiver of usury will remain, and if he does not receive it, some of its vapor will reach him. Ibn Isa said, Some of its dust will reach him. Great Da'if. Asim ibn Kulayb quoted his father's authority for the following statement by one of the Ansar. We went out with the Messenger of Allah to a funeral, and I saw the Messenger of Allah at the grave giving giving this instruction to the gravedigger: make it wide on the side of his feet, and make it wide on the side of his head. When he came back, he was received by a man who conveyed an invitation from a woman. So he came to her, to it food was brought, and he put his hand, took a morsel in his hand. The people did the same, and they ate. Our fathers noticed that the messenger of Allah was moving a morsel around his mouth. He then said, I find the flesh of a sheep which has been taken without its owner's permission. The woman sent a message to say, Messenger of Allah, I sent someone to Al-Naki to have a sheep bought for me, but there was none. So I sent a message to my neighbor who had bought a sheep, asking him to send it to me for the price he had paid, but he could not be found. I therefore sent a message to his wife, and she sent it to me. The Messenger of Allah said, give this food to the prisoners. Great Sahih. Chapter 1249. Regarding the one who consumes riba and the one who pays it. Narrated Abdullah ibn Masud. The Messenger of Allah cursed the one who accepted usury, the one who paid it, the witness to it, and the one who recorded it. Great Sahih. Chapter 1250. Regarding the abolition of riba. Narrated Sulaiman b. Ahmed. On the authority of his father, I heard the Messenger of Allah say in the farewell pilgrimage, Lo, all claims to usury of the pre-Islamic period have been abolished. You shall have your capital sums. Deal not unjustly, and you shall not be dealt with unjustly. Lo, all claims for blood vengeance belonging to the pre-Islamic period have been abolished. The first of those murdered among us whose blood vengeance are remit is Al-Harith ibn Abdul Muttalib, who suckled among Banu Layth and killed by Hudhail. He then said, O Allah, have I conveyed the message? They said, yes, saying it 3 times. He then said, O Allah, be witness, saying it 3 times. Great Sahih. Chapter 1251. Regarding it being disliked to swear oaths when buying and selling. Narrated Abu Hurairah. I heard Messenger of Allah say, swearing produces a ready sale for a commodity, but blots out the blessing. The narrator Ibn al-Sad said, for earning, he also narrated this tradition from Sa'id b al-Musayyab on the authority of Abu Hurairah from the Prophet. Great Sahih. Chapter 1252. Regarding giving a little more when weighing and weighing for a fee. Narrated Suwayd ibn Qais. I and Makrafa al-Abdi imported some garments from Hajar and brought them to Mecca. The Messenger of Allah came to us walking, and after he had bargained with us for some trousers, we sold them to him. There was a man who was weighing for payment. The Messenger of Allah said to him, weigh out and give overweight. Great Sahih. The tradition mentioned above, number 3000 330 has also been transmitted by Abu Safwan ibn Umayra through a different chain of narrators. This version has: Abu Safwan said, I came to the Messenger of Allah at Mecca before his immigration. He then narrated the rest of the tradition, but he did not mention the words, who was weighing for payment. Abu Dawud said, Qais also transmitted it as Sufyan said. The version of Sufyan is authoritative, great Sahih. Narrated Ibn Abi Risma, I heard my father say, a man said to Shuba, Sufyan opposed you. He narrated a tradition which differs from your version. He replied, you racked my mind. I have been told that Yahya b Ma'in said, if anyone opposes Sufyan, the version of Sufyan will be acceptable. Great Sahih. Shuba said, the memory of Sufyan was stronger than mine. Great Sahih Maktu. Chapter 1253. Regarding the statement of the Prophet SAW, the standard measure is the measure of Al-Madinah. Narrated Abdullah ibn Umar. The Prophet said, the standard weight is the weight of the people of Mecca, and the standard measure is the measure of the people of Medina. Abu Dawud said, Al-Firyabi and Abu Ahmad have also transmitted from Sufyan in a similar way, and he, Ibn Dukain, agreed with them on the text. The version of Abu Ahmad has from Ibn Abbas instead of Ibn Umar. It has also been transmitted by Al-Walid b Muslim from Hansala. This version has the weight of Medina and the measure of Mecca. Abu Dawud said, there is a variation in the text of the version of this tradition. Narrated by Malik bin Dinar from Atta from the Prophet. Great Sahih. Chapter 1254. Regarding the stern warning about debt. Narrated Samura. The Messenger of Allah addressed us and said, is here any one of such and such tribe present? But no one replied. He again asked, is here anyone of such and such tribe present? But no one replied. He again asked, is here anyone of such and such tribe? Then a man stood and said, I am here, Messenger of Allah. He said, what prevented you from replying the first 2 times? I wish to tell you something good. Your companion has been detained from entering paradise on account of his debt. Then I saw him that he paid off all his debt on his behalf, and there remained no one to demand from him anything. Abu Dawud said, the name of the narrator Saman is Saman bi Mushannaj. Great Hassan. Narrated Abu Musa al-Ashari. The Prophet said, after the grave sins which Allah has prohibited, the greatest sin is that a man dies while he has debt due from him and does not leave anything to pay it off, and meets him with it. Great Daif. Narrated Jabir ibn Abdullah. The Messenger of Allah would not say funeral prayer over a person who died while the debt was due from him. A dead Muslim was brought to him, and he asked, "Is there any debt due from him?" They, the people, said, "Yes." 2 dirhams, he said, "Pray yourselves over your companion." Then Abu Qatada al-Ansari said, "I shall pay them, Messenger of Allah." The Messenger of Allah then The Messenger of Allah then prayed over him. When Allah granted conquests to the Messenger of Allah, he said, I am nearer to every believer than himself. So if anyone dies and leaves a debt, I shall be responsible for paying it. And if anyone leaves property, it goes to his heirs. Great Sahih. A similar tradition has also been transmitted by Ibn Abbas through a different chain of narrators. This version says, he, the Prophet, purchased a calf from a caravan, but he had no money with him. He then sold it with some profit and gave the profit in charity to the poor and widows of Banu Abd al-Muttalib. He then said, I shall not buy anything after this, but only when I have money with me. Grade Daif. Chapter 1255. Regarding one who delays repayment of a debt. Narrated Abu Huraira. The Messenger of Allah, as saying, delay in payment of debt by a rich man is injunctive, but when one of you is referred to a wealthy man, he should accept their reference. Great Sahih. Chapter 1256. Regarding paying off debts well. Narrated Abu Rafi. The Messenger of Allah borrowed a young camel, and when the camels of the Sadaqah alms came to him, he ordered me to pay the man his young camel. I said, I find only an excellent camel in its 7th year. So the Prophet said, give it to him, for the best person is he who discharges his debt in the best manner. Great Sahih. Narrated Jabir ibn Abdullah. The Prophet owed me a debt and gave me something extra when he paid it. Great Sahih. Chapter 1257. Regarding exchange. Narrated Umar. The Messenger of Allah, as saying, gold for gold is interest unless both hand over on the spot. Wheat for wheat is interest unless both hand over on the spot. Dates for dates is interest unless both hand over on the spot. Barley for barley is interest unless both hand over on the spot. Great Sahih. Narrated Ubadah ibn as-Samit. The Messenger of Allah said, gold is to be paid for with gold, raw and coined, silver with silver, raw and coined in equal weight, wheat with wheat, and in equal measure, barley with barley in equal measure, dates with dates in equal measure, salt by salt with equal measure. If anyone gives more or asks more, he has dealt in usury. But there is no harm in selling gold for silver and silver for gold in unequal weight, payment being made on the spot. Do not sell them if they are to be paid for later. There is no harm in selling wheat for barley and barley for wheat, in unequal measure, payment being made on the spot. If the payment is to be made later, then do not sell them. Abu Dawud said, this tradition has also been transmitted by Sa'id bi Abi Aruba, Hisham al-Dastawai, and Qatada from Muslim bi Yasar through his chain. Great Sahih. The tradition mentioned above has also been transmitted by Ubadah bi al-Samit through a different chain of transmitters, with some alternation. This version adds, he said, if these classes differ, sell as you wish if payment is made on the spot. Great Sahih. Chapter 1258, regarding jewelry on swords being sold for dirhams. Narrated Fudala ibn Ubaid. The Prophet was brought a necklace in which there were gold and pearls. The narrators Abu Bakr and Ahmad ibn Mani said, the pearls were set with gold in it, and a man bought it for 9 or 7 dinars. The Prophet said, it must not be sold till the contents are considered separately. The narrator said, he returned it till the contents were considered separately. The narrator Ibn Asa said, by this I intended trade. Abu Dawud said, the word hijara, stone, was recorded in his notebook before, but he changed it and narrated tijara, trade. Great Sahih. Narrated Fudala bin Ubaid. At the Battle of Khaybar, I bought a necklace in which there were gold and pearls for 12 dinars. I separated them and found that its worth was more than 12 dinars. So I mentioned that to the Prophet, who said, it must not be sold till the contents are considered separately. Great Sahih. Narrated Fudala bin Ubaid. We were with the Messenger of Allah at the Battle of Khaybar. We were selling to the Jews 1 ukiya of gold for 1 dinar. The narrators other than Qutayba said, for 2 or 3 dinars. Then both the versions agreed. The Messenger of Allah said, do not sell gold except with equal weight. Great Sahih. Chapter 1259, regarding paying with gold for a price in silver. Narrated Abdullah ibn Umar. I used to sell camels at al-Baqi for dinars and take dirhams for them, and sell for dirhams and take dinars for them. I would take these for these and give these for these. I went to the Messenger of Allah, who was in the house of Hafsa. I said, Messenger of Allah, take it easy. I shall ask you a question. I sell camels at al-Baqi. I sell them for dinars and take dirhams, and I sell for dirhams and take dinars. I take these for these and give these for these. The Messenger of Allah then said, there is no harm in taking them at the current rate, so long as you do not separate, leaving something to be settled. Great Da'if. The tradition mentioned above has also been transmitted by Simak bi Harb, with a different chain of narrators, and to the same effect. The first version is more perfect. It does not mention the words at the current rate. Chapter 1260, regarding animals for animals on credit, narrated Samura ibn Jundub. The Prophet forbade selling animals for animals when paying was to be made a later date. Great Sahih. Chapter 1261, concession allowing that, narrated Abdullah ibn Amr ibn Alas. The Messenger of Allah commanded him to equip an army, but the camels were insufficient, so he commanded him to keep back the young camels of Sadaqah, and he was taking a camel to be replaced by two when the camels of Sadaqah came. Great Daif. Chapter 1262, if that is hand to hand, narrated Jabir. The Prophet bought a slave for 2 slaves. Great Sahih. Chapter 1263, regarding fresh dates for dry dates. Said Abu Ayas asked Sa'd ibn Abi Waqas about the sale of the soft and white kind of wheat for barley. Sa'd said, "Which of them is better?" He replied, "Soft and white kind of wheat." So he forbade him from it and said, I heard the Messenger of Allah Sawa say, when he was asked about buying dry dates for fresh, the Messenger of Allah Sawa said, "Are fresh dates diminished when they become dry?" The people replied, "Yes." So the Messenger of Allah forbade that. Abu Dawud said, a similar tradition has also been transmitted by Ismail bi Umayyah. Great Sahih. Narrated Sa'd ibn Abi Waqas. The Messenger of Allah forbade to sell fresh dates for dry dates when payment is made at a later date. Abu Dawud said, the tradition mentioned above has also been transmitted by Sa'd bi Abi Waqas from the Prophet through a different chain of narrators in a similar way. Chapter 1264, regarding Al-Musabana, narrated Ibn Umar. The Prophet forbade the sale of fruits on the tree for fruits by measure, and sale of grapes for raisins by measure, and sale of harvest for wheat by measure. Great Sahih. Chapter 1265, regarding Araya transactions, narrated Said bi Thabit. The Prophet gave license for the sale of Araya for dry dates and fresh dates. Great Sahih. Narrated Sal bi Abi Katma. The Messenger of Allah forbade the sale of fruits for dry dates, but gave license regarding the Araya for its sale on the basis of a calculation of their amount, but those who buy them can eat them when fresh. Great Sahih. Chapter 1266, regarding estimating for Araya, narrated Abu Huraira. The Messenger of Allah gave license regarding the sale of Araya when the amount was less than 5 wasks or 5 wasks. Dawud bi al-Hussein was doubtful. Abu Dawud said, the tradition by Jabir indicates up to 4 wasks. Great Sahih. Chapter 1267, regarding the explanation of Araya. Abd Rabihi bi Sa'id al-Ansari said, Ariya means that a man gives another man a palm tree on loan. or it means that reserves 1 or 2 palm trees from his property for his personal use. Then he sells for dry dates. Ibn Ishaq said, Araya means that a man lends another man some palm trees, but he, the owner, feels inconvenient that the man looks after the trees by frequent visits. He, the borrower, sells them to the owner by calculation. Chapter 1268. Regarding selling crops before they are ripe. Narrated Abdullah bin Umar. The Messenger of Allah forbade the sale of fruits till they were clearly in good condition, forbidding it both to the seller and to the buyer. Great Sahih. Narrated Ibn Umar. The Messenger of Allah forbade selling palm trees till the dates began to ripen, and ears of corn till they were white and were safe from blight, forbidding it both to the buyer and to the seller. Great Sahih. Narrated Abu Huraira. The Messenger of Allah forbade to sell spoils of war till they are appointed, and to sell palm trees till they are safe from every blight, and a man praying without tying belt. Great Da'if in chain. Narrated Jabir bin Abdullah. The Messenger of Allah forbade the sale of fruits until they are ripened. Tushkiha. He was asked, "What do you mean by their ripening, Ishka?" He replied, "They become red or yellow, and they are eaten." Great Sahih. Narrated Anas ibn Malik. The Prophet forbade the sale of grapes till they became black, and the sale of grain till it had become hard. Great Sahih. Yunus said, I asked Abu Sinad about the sale of fruits before they were clearly in good condition, and what was said about it. He replied, Urwa ibn As-Subayr reports a tradition from Sal ibn Abi Hatma on the authority of Zayd ibn Thabit, who said, the people used to sell fruits before they were clearly in good condition. When the people cut off the fruits and were demanded to pay the price, the buyer said, the fruits have been smitten by Duman, Kusham and Murad fruit diseases, on which they used to dispute. When their disputes, which were brought to the Prophet, increased, the Messenger of Allah said to them as an advice, no, do not sell fruits till they are in good condition, due to a large number of their disputes and differences. Great Sahih. Narrated Jabir ibn Abdullah. The Prophet forbade the sale of fruits till they were clearly in good condition, and ordered that they should not be sold but for dinar or dirham except araya. Great Sahih. Chapter 1269. Regarding selling crops years in advance. Narrated Jabir ibn Abdullah. The Prophet forbade selling fruits years ahead and commanded that unforeseen loss be remitted in respect of what is affected by blight. Abu Dawud said, the attribution of the tradition regarding the effect of blight is 1/3 of the produce to their Prophet is not correct. This is the opinion of the people of Medina. Great Sahih. Narrated Jabir bin Abdullah, the Prophet forbade sale of fruits for a number of years. One of the two narrators, Abu al-Zubair and Said b Mina, mentioned the words sale for years by al-Sinin instead of al-Muawama. Great Sahih. Chapter 1270, regarding transactions involving ambiguity. Narrated Abu Hurairah, the Prophet forbade the type of sale which involves risk or uncertainty and a transaction determined by throwing stones. Great Sahih. Narrated Abu Sa'id al-Khudri, the Prophet forbade two types of business transactions and two ways of dressing. The two types of business transactions are mulamasa and munabadha. As regards the two ways of dressing, they are the wrapping of the sama, and that when a man wraps himself up in a single garment while sitting in such a way that he does not cover his private parts, or there is no garment on his private parts. Great Sahih. The tradition mentioned above has also been reported by Abu Sa'id al-Khudri from the Prophet through a different chain of narrators. This version adds, wearing the sama means that a man puts his garment over his left shoulder and keeps his right side uncovered. Munabada means that a man says to another, if I throw this garment to you, the sale will be certain. Mulamasa means that a man touches another's garment, with his hand, and neither he unfolds it nor turns it over. When he touched it, the sale becomes binding. Great Sahih. The tradition mentioned above has also been transmitted by Abu Sa'id al-Khudri through a different chain of narrators from the Messenger of Allah to the same effect as narrated by both Sufyan and Abd al-Razak. Great Sahih. Narrated Ibn Umar, the Messenger of Allah forbade the transaction called Habal al-Habala. Great Sahih. A similar tradition has also been narrated by Ibn Umar from the Prophet through a different chain of transmitters. He said, Habal al-Habala means that a she-camel delivers an offspring, and then the offspring which it delivers becomes pregnant. Great Sahih. Chapter 1271, regarding forced sales. Narrated Ali ibn Abu Talib, a time is certainly coming to mankind when people will bite each other and a rich man will hold fast what he has in his possession, yet his property, though he was not commanded for that. Allah Most High said, and do not forget liberality between yourselves. The men who are forced will contract sale, while the Prophet forbade forced contract. one which involves some uncertainty, and the sale of fruit before it is ripe. Great Daif. Chapter 1272. Regarding partnerships. Narrated Abu Huraira, the Messenger of Allah, having said, Allah Most High says, I make a third with two partners, as long as one of them does not cheat the other, but when he cheats him, I depart from them. Great Daif. Chapter 1273. Regarding an agent doing something other than what he was instructed to do. Narrated Urwa ibn Abu Uad al-Bariki. The Prophet gave him a dinar to buy a sacrificial animal, or a sheep. He bought 2 sheep, sold one of them for a dinar, and brought him a sheep and dinar. So he invoked a blessing on him in his business dealing, and he was such that if had he bought dust, he would have made a profit from it. Great Sahih. The tradition mentioned above has also been transmitted by Urwat al-Bariki through a different chain of narrators. The wordings of this version are different from those of the previous one. Narrated Hakim ibn Hisham, the Messenger of Allah sent with him a dinar to buy a sacrificial animal for him. He bought a sheep for a dinar, sold it for 2, and then returned and bought a sacrificial animal for a dinar for him, and brought the extra dinar to the Prophet. The Prophet gave it as alms, sadaqah, and invoked blessing on him in his trading. Great Daif. Chapter 1274. Regarding a man who does trade with another man's wealth without his permission. Narrated Abd Allah bi Umar. I heard the Messenger of Allah say, if any of you can become like the man who had a farak of rice, he should become like him. They, the people, asked, who is the man who had a farak of rice with him? Messenger of Allah. Thereupon he narrated the story of the cave when a hillock fell on them. 3 persons, each of them said, mention any best work of yours. The narrator said, the third of them said, O Allah, you know that I took a hireling for a farak of rice. When the evening came, I presented to him his due, his wages, but he refused to take it and went away. I then cultivated it until I amassed cows and their herdsmen for him. He then met me and said, give me my dues. I said to him, go to those cows and their herdsmen and take them all. He went and drove them away. Chapter 1275. Regarding partnership without capital. Narrated Abdullah ibn Masud. I, Ammar, and Saad became partners in what we would receive on the day of Badr. Saad then brought 2 prisoners, but I and Ammar did not bring anything. Great Daif. Chapter 1276. Musara sharecropping. Amr ibn Dinar said, I heard Ibn Umar say, We did not see any harm in sharecropping till I heard Rafi ibn Khadij say, "The Messenger of Allah has forbidden it." So I mentioned it to Tavis. He said, "Ibn Abbas told me that the Messenger of Allah had not forbidden it, but said, 'It is better for one of you to lend to his brother than to take a prescribed sum from him.'" Great Sahih. Narrated Urwa bi al-Zubair that Sayd ibn Thabit said, "May Allah forgive Rafi ibn Khadij. I swear by Allah, I have more knowledge of hadith than him. Two persons of the Ansar, according to the version of Musaddad, came to him who were disputing with each other. The Messenger of Allah said, 'If this is your position, then do not lease the agricultural land.' The version of Musaddad has, 'So he, Rafi ibn Khadij, heard his statement, 'Do not lease agricultural lands.' Grade Daif. Narrated Sa'd. We used to lease land for what grew by the streamlets and for what was watered from them. The Messenger of Allah forbade us to do that and commanded us to lease it for gold or silver. Great Hassan. Narrated Hansla bi Qais al-Ansari. I asked Rafi bi Khadij about the lease of land for gold and silver. Yet for dinars and dirhams there is no harm in it, for the people used to let out land in the time of the Messenger of Allah for what grew by the current of water and at the banks of streamlets and at the places of cultivation. So sometimes this portion perished and that portion was saved, and sometimes this remained intact and that perished. There was no form of lease among the people except this. Therefore he forbade it. But if there is something which is secure and known, then there is no harm in it. The tradition of Ibrahim is more perfect. Qutayba said from Hansala on the authority of Rafi. Abu Dawud said, a similar tradition has been transmitted by Yahya bi Sa'id from Hansala. Great Sahih. Hansala ibn Qais said that he asked Rafi ibn Khadij about the lease of land. He replied, "The Messenger of Allah forbade the leasing of land." I asked, "Did he forbid for gold and silver, yet dinars and dirhams?" He replied, "If it is against gold and silver, then there is no harm in it." Great Sahih. Chapter 1277. Regarding the stern warning concerning that. Narrated Salim bin Abdullah bi Umar. Ibn Umar used to let out his land till it reached him that Rafi bi Khadij al-Ansari narrated that the Messenger of Allah forbade let out land. So Abd Allah bi Umar said, "Ibn Khadij, what do you narrate from the Messenger of Allah about leasing the land?" Rafi replied to Abd Allah bi Umar, I heard both of my uncles who were present in the Battle of Badr say, and they narrated it to the members of the family, that the Messenger of Allah forbade leasing land. Abd Allah said, "I swear by Allah, I knew that land was leased in In the time of the Messenger of Allah, Abd Allah then feared that the Messenger of Allah might have created something new in that matter, so he gave up leasing land. Abu Dawud said, this tradition has also been transmitted by Ayub, Ubaid Allah, Katir bi Farkad, Malik from Nafi, on the authority of Rafi from the Prophet. It has also been transmitted by Al-Awsai from Hafs bi Inan al-Hanafi from Nafi from Rafi, who said, I heard the Messenger of Allah say. Similarly, it has been transmitted by Said bi Abi Unaysa from Al-Hakam from Nafi from Ibn Umar that he went to Rafi and asked, have you heard the Messenger of Allah say? He replied, yes. Similarly, it has also been transmitted by Ikrima bi Ammar from Abu al-Najashi from Rafi bi Khadij, who said, I heard the Prophet say. It has also been transmitted by Al-Awsai from Abu al-Najashi from Rafi bi Khadij from his uncle Suhair bi Rafi from the Prophet. Abu Dawud said, the name of Abu al-Najashi is Atta bi Suhaib. Great Sahih. Narrated Rafi bi Khadij. We used to employ people to till land for a share of its produce. He then maintained that one of his uncles came to him and said, the Messenger of Allah forbade us from a work which beneficial to us, but obedience to Allah and His Apostle is more beneficial to us. We asked, what is that? He said, the Messenger of Allah said, if anyone has land, he should cultivate it or lend it to his brother for cultivation. He should not rent it for a third or a quarter of the produce, or for specified amount of produce. Great Sahih. Ayub said, Yala bi Hakim wrote to me, I heard Sulaiman bi Yasar narrating the tradition to the same effect, as narrated by Ubaid Allah and through the same chain. Narrated Rafi ibn Khadij. Abu Rafi came to us from the Messenger of Allah said, the Messenger of Allah forbade us from a work which benefited us, but obedience to Allah and His Apostle is more beneficial to us. He forbade that one of us cultivates land except the one which he owns, or the land which a man lends him to cultivate. Great Hassan Li Gairi. Narrated Usaid bi Suhair. Rafi bi Khadij came to us and said, the Messenger of Allah forbids you from a work which is beneficial to you, and obedience to Allah and His Prophet is more beneficial to you. The Messenger of Allah forbids you from renting land for a share of its produce, and he said, if anyone is not in need of his land, he should lend it to his brother or leave it. Abu Dawud said, Shuba and Mufadal bi Muhalhal have narrated it from Mansur in similar way. Shuba said in his version, Usaid, nephew of Rafi bi Khadij, great Sahih. Abu Jafar al-Khatmi said, my uncle sent me and his slave to Sa'id ibn al-Musayyab We said to him, "There is something which has reached us about sharecropping." He replied, "Ibn Umar did not see any harm in it until a tradition reached him from Rafi ibn Khadij." He then came to him, and Rafi told him that the Messenger of Allah came to Banu Haritha and saw crop in the land of Suhair. He said, "What an excellent crop of Suhair is." They said, "It does not belong to Suhair." He asked, "Is this not the land of Suhair?" They said, "Yes." "But the crop belongs to so and so." He said, "Take your crop and give him the wages." Rafi said, "We took our crop and gave him the wages." Sa'id ibn al-Musayyab said, "Lend your brother or employ him for dirhams." Great Sahih in chain. Narrated Rafi ibn Khadij. The Messenger of Allah forbade muhakala and musabana. Those who cultivate land are free. A man who has his own land and he tills it. A man who has been lent land and he tills the one lent to him. A man who employs another man to till land against gold dinars or silver dirhams. Great Sahih. Abu Dawud said, "I read out this tradition to Sa'id bi Yaqub al-Talikini, and I said to him, Ibn al-Mubarak transmitted this tradition to you from Sa'id Abi Shuja, who said, Uthman bi Sal bi Rafi bi Khadij narrated it to me, saying, I was an orphan, being nourished under the guardianship of Rafi bi Khadij, and I performed Hajj with him. My brother Imran bi Sal then came to me and said, we rented out land to so and so for 200 dirhams. He said, leave it, for the Prophet forbade renting land. Great Shad. Narrated Rafi ibn Khadij. Rafi had cultivated a land. The Prophet passed him when he was watering it, so he asked him, to whom does the crop belong? And to whom does the land belong? He replied, the crop is mine, for my seed and labor. The half of the crop is mine, and the half for so and so. He said, you conducted usurious transaction. Return the land to its owner, and take your wages and cost. Great Daif in Chain. Chapter 1278. Regarding cultivating land without the permission of its owner. Narrated Rafi ibn Khadij. The Prophet said, if anyone sows in other people's land without their permission, he has no right to any of the crop, but he may have what it cost him. Great Sahih. Chapter 1279. Regarding Mukabara. Narrated Jabir bi Abd Allah. The Messenger of Allah forbade Muhakala, Musabana, Mukabara and Muawana. One of the two narrators from Hamad said the word Mu'awama, and others said selling many years ahead. The agreed version then goes, and Tunia, but gave license for Araya. Great Sahih. Narrated Jabir bi Abd Allah. The Messenger of Allah forbade Musabana, Muhakala, and Tunia, except it is known. Great Sahih. Narrated Jabir bi Abd Allah. I heard the Messenger of Allah say, If any of you does not leave Mukabara, he should take notice of war from Allah and his apostle. Grade Da'if. Narrated Said B. Thabit. The Messenger of Allah forbade Mukabara. I asked, "What is Mukabara?" He replied, "That you have the land for cultivation for half, a third, or a quarter of the produce." Grade Sahih. Chapter 1280. Regarding Musaka. Narrated Ibn Umar. The Messenger of Allah made an agreement with the people of Khaybar to work and cultivate in return for half of the fruits or produce. Great Sahih. Narrated Ibn Umar. The Prophet handed over the Jews of Khaybar the palm trees and the land of Khaybar on condition that they should employ what belonged to them in working on them, and that he should have half of the fruits. Great Sahih. Narrated Ibn Abbas. The Messenger of Allah conquered Khaybar and stipulated that all the land, gold and silver, would belong to him. The people of Khaybar said, "We know the land more than you, so give it to us on condition that you should have half of the produce, and we would have the half." He then gave it to them on that condition. When the time of picking the fruits of the palm trees came, he sent Abd Allah bi Rawaha to them, and he assessed the amount of the fruits of the palm trees. This is what the people of Medina call Qars, assessment. He used to say, "In these palm trees there is such and such amount of produce." They would say, "You assessed more to us, Ibn Rawaha, than the real amount." He would say, "I first take the responsibility of assessing the fruits of the palm trees and give you half of the amount I said." They would say, "This is true, and on this equity stand the heavens and the earth. We agreed that we should take the amount which you said." Great Hassan Sahih. The tradition mentioned above has also been narrated by Jafar B. Burkan through his chain and to the same effect. This version has, he said, he assessed, and after the words of Kul Safara wa Baida, he said, "That is gold and silver will belong to him." Great Sahih in chain. Narrated Miksam. When the Prophet conquered Khaybar, he then narrated it like the tradition of Said B. Abu al-Sarka. This version has, he then assessed the produce of the palm trees and said, "I take the job of picking the fruit myself, and I shall give you half of the amount I said." Great Sahih in chain. Chapter 1281. Regarding Al-Qars, estimation of fruits on palm trees. Narrated Aisha, Muminin. The Prophet used to send Abdullah ibn Rawaha to Khaybar, and he would assess the amount of dates when they began to ripen before they were eaten by the Jews. He would then give choice to the Jews that they have been. He would then give choice to the Jews that they have them on their possession by that assessment, or could assign to them Muslims by that assignment, so that the amount of zakat could be calculated before the fruit became eatable and distributed among the people. Great Da'if in chain. Narrated Jabir ibn Abdullah. When Allah bestowed Khaybar on his prophet as a result of conquest without fighting, the Messenger of Allah allowed them to remain there as they were before and apportioned it between him and them. He then sent Abdullah ibn Rawaha, who assessed the amount of dates upon them. Great Sahih li Ghairi. Narrated Jabir ibn Abdullah. Ibn Rawaha assessed them the amount of dates at 40,000 wasks, and when Ibn Rawaha gave them option, the Jews took the fruits in their possession, and 20,000 wasks of dates were due from them. Great Sahih in chain.